Hi everyone, this is Noelle from Petitti's, and we are in our little test garden over here, and it is all about late summer, early fall dividing perennials. And when you do this, the signal time is, I'm going to say, when the hosta stop blooming, go for it, okay? So here today we have divided a large chunk of hosta, and we're going to show you how easy it is to do. It really is a very, very easy plant to grow for us, and we absolutely love it. We're in a fairly shady yard, so there's hosta everywhere, and I'll tell you, even when they get overgrown, they still grow well. If they're not blooming as well, that usually means that they're very, very compacted and very intergrown into each other. But other than that, they'll just do their thing for you. And I think the only problem is, they do get eaten by deer. They really don't damage them that much other than removing the foliage, and then they'll try to push new foliage out. So it's always good to spray them. And I think the other thing that you want to watch out for are, of course, slug and snail damage. And there's iron phosphate, different types of slug and snail baits out there. They're all iron phosphate as the active ingredient, and they're awesome. They work really well. They're natural, they're environmentally friendly. So really, those are excellent things to watch out for if you're growing your hosta out there. So today we're here in this garden, and there's this huge, obviously you can see this huge clump of hosta, and or plantain lily. Lots of people use that name too. And I'm going to say everywhere where you see scapes, so those long spent stems of the flowers that come up from the hosta, is like a clump, a nice big mature specimen. So we counted, and we think we have about a dozen mature specimens. The other thing that you want to know is that hosta are so tough, they literally are planted maybe 6 inches above really wet clay soil. In fact, it rained today, which helped me out because it was much easier to dig around the hosta clumps, but there is water down in the bottom of this hole that I dug. So needless to say, super, super tough, can take very wet, very poor draining, very clay soil, and of course shady areas, so that 4 or less hours of direct sunlight is really the best. They'll thrive in that type of condition, so keep that in mind. First, to start out with, if you're looking at what our rule of thumb is, if your plants bloom in the spring, you want to divide them opposite season they bloom, okay? So your spring bloomers, let's say Lenten rose, great spring bloomer, we typically will divide that in the fall, okay? However, we can do that in the spring too. So there's a couple things that we can kind of fudge the rules, but keep that in mind, sort of the rule of thumb. So opposite season that the plant blooms, that's when you want to dig and divide, and even transplant sometimes too. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. Now with hosta, they are typically midsummer bloomers. Some bloom a little bit earlier in the summer, some bloom a little bit later in the summer. But guess what? It doesn't matter. So when you have a midsummer bloomer like a hosta, a daylily, you can divide them either in the spring if you want to, if you're able to and the weather's cooperating, or in the fall. And right now the weather conditions are phenomenal at this later summer moment that we're having here. We just figured, let's do it. So needless to say, you can actually divide them in a couple different ways, but I wanted to tell you first, cut the foliage back and get it out of your way. Get any of the spent flower scapes out of your way. So you literally are cutting the plant back to just a few inches, okay? So 2, 3, 4 inches, no problem, it's fine. Any height is really fine. You're just trying to get all of the bulk out of the way. And there's a huge bulk of leaves here for the compost pile. So then after you cut everything back and move it aside, then look at your clump. And when you look down, you might see in particular, certain clumps forming from that original plant. And so with this plant, we probably had about 3 fairly distinct but mature clumps coming from that one plant material. So what I decided to do was just dig around an offshoot, and it was a clump that was kind of offset a little bit further between the or further from the other two. And I just dug all the way around, no more than 5-6 inches deep. You could tell I was cutting right through roots, but it won't hurt the plant at all. And so needless to say, pulled that clump out, laid it on the ground, just chopped it with my shovel, and we have 4 pieces now from this one mature piece. And these are ready to plant and ready to go really anywhere we want to put them. So from that point, you just prepare your soil like we talk about with 6 steps for success. So that's Angelo's planting guide. And it's really easy to do. So hostas at this time of year or in spring when they just start emerging, it's very, very easy. You just get a sharp shovel, just dig around the pieces that you want, lift them up, and just go ahead and plant them in that new spot that you want to have more hosta in. So it's really, really great. Other plants you can do this with, of course, daylilies. Daylilies are just as easy as hosta. Obviously, they appreciate a little bit more sun than hosta do. So you're looking at, again, 4 to 6 hours. I like to see them in 6 or more hours just so you get a really good bloom out of them. But a lot of people question, why have my daylilies stopped blooming as well, or they're not producing as many flower stalks? Again, because they can get overgrown, and then again they just combine against each other, and then they just don't have the energy to compete and push those flower stalks up. So keep that in mind if you're thinking, gosh, my perennials aren't performing the way that they used to, and you know they've been in the ground for, let's say, 3 years, 5 years, even 7 years, and you think, wow, I haven't lifted those, I haven't divided those out. It will help, and I'm telling you, late summer, early fall for doing those types of things to perennials, lifting and dividing and replanting really, really helps them out in the long run. So there are just a few perennials that you do want to keep in mind that are a little bit particular about when they want to be transplanted and divided. And the 3 families you should always consider and do at this time of year: iris, okay, so it could be bearded iris, or it could be Siberian iris, or whatever type of iris you have. It is really a good time to divide them in that late August, early September through September, window, just because it's a perfect temperature for them to get going, cut that foliage back, dig them up, go ahead and divide, and then again replant, okay? Same thing with peonies and poppies. And what we always say about peonies, and Angelo says this too, is that you want to make sure that when you're digging a peony to move it to another area, that you put it exactly at the same depth in that new hole, okay? So I would recommend taking a ruler out there with you. You're digging the hole around the peonies. You're gonna lift them. You might go 6 inches deep. You might go, 9 inches deep, what have you. So you're getting the entire tuber. And then when you go to divide and replant, you take that ruler and dig down to wherever it was before, and you make sure that you plant them at that same level. Okay, so that's really, really important with the peonies. Poppies, not so much. They're pretty easy. They just don't like to be moved in the springtime. They really, really appreciate getting moved around and replanted in the fall. So keep those 3 in mind. Okay, I think that's it for dividing hosta and other perennials. Enjoy.